You've been changed. I know. Hello, and welcome to Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron. Sunday School lesson for Sunday, September 18th, 2022. Our reference material for the Sunday School Summary is based upon the International Sunday School Lesson Series as published by the Sunday School Publishing Board. We are discussing God's Exceptional Choice as the title of the Fall Lesson Series. God's Exceptional Choice is a discussion of the continuous progression of God's grace and mercy working through salvation from Abraham to Jesus and the early church, and even the deliverance of our ancestors from bondage. The God's Exceptional Choice lesson series is categorized into 3 units or groups of lessons. We are in Unit 1, and we're discussing God Calls Abraham's Family, and it explores God's unpredictable and unexpected choices in realizing the covenant with Abraham. Now, God Calls Abraham's Family focuses on unlikely choices and unexpected people to effect or execute his promise to bless Abraham and his family of descendants and make them a great nation. The title of our 3rd lesson in the Fall Unit Lesson Series is titled Persevere in Times of Difficulty, or to keep trying or carry on in spite of circumstances. And for the Christian, our perseverance is based upon our faith in God. The background to today's lesson, Persevere in Times of Difficulties. The lesson is a continuation of the promised covenant with Abraham and the challenges and struggles of securing the promise of the covenant. The Lord blessed Abraham, and he lived to see his promised heir Isaac live to be a grown man, and Abraham died at 175 years old. Isaac and his wife Rebekah produced twin sons, Esau and Jacob, after 20 years of infertility or struggles, just as Abraham and his wife Sarah. The twins struggled for supremacy even from the birth, and Jacob, which resulted in deception. The rivalry resulted in deception by Jacob, who tricked Esau into giving up his birthright for a bowl of stew, and he later tricked his father Isaac out of Esau's blessing as the firstborn son. In response to these events, Jacob leaves Canaan and travels to the land of his mother's brother Laban to find a wife among his father's people and to escape the murderous rage of Esau. Now the Lord blesses Jacob, and he is prosperous, and after 20 years, God speaks to Jacob once more and commands him to return to his own people in Canaan, and God promises to be with Jacob, which brings us to today's lesson. There are 2 summary lesson points for today: struggling with God from Genesis chapter 32, verses 22 through 26. And struggle with self, and that's from Genesis chapter 32, verses 27 through 32. The passages for the lesson today revolve around the key words faith, birthright, and struggle. Now we know that faith is the complete trust, assurance, belief, or confidence. And as Abraham was counted righteous for his faith in God. Birthright is an honor given to the firstborn, and it bestows the head of household status or the patriarch of the family. and the right to inherit the father's estate. Esau gave up his birthright for a bowl of stew in today's lesson. Struggle is to exert a strenuous effort to act or proceed in the face of challenges or opposition. And in today's lesson, it is Jacob struggles with deceptive actions on his part, as well as his father-in-law and his wife, in order to realize the promise of the covenant and God's purpose in his life, which brings us in today's lesson. Our first summary point, struggling with God, and this is from Genesis chapter 32, verses 22 through 26. And in these passages, Jacob is alone and he struggles with the Lord, or he wrestles with the Lord in the form of a man or an angel. And it says that night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok, which is a tributary of the Jordan River. And after he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So he was left alone, and he encountered a man during the night. And the man wrestled with him till daybreak. And when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched, and as he wrestled with the man. So it is a marker that he has been in a fight, that his hip socket was knocked out of joint in the struggle. The next summary point is that Jacob struggles with himself, and these passages discusses Jacob's conversation with the man or the angel that he is wrestling with. And the man asked him, "What is your name?" And Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." And keep in mind that Jacob's name is the heel grabber, or the deceptive one. So Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" And then he blessed him there. And then Jacob knew who he was wrestling with. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." So he realizes that this is a transformational activity, a transformational in his life, that he has wrestled with God, he has struggled with his past, who he is, and God has transformed him into a new person, and he has seen the errors of his ways. So Jacob called the place Peniel. The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. And therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon of the socket of the hip, because the socket of the hip was touched near the tendons. So they will never forget that experience of Jacob wrestling with God. So Jacob struggled with God and persevered. So for that, God rewarded him and blessed him. We too, in our lives, have to struggle in order to realize God's purpose and also to understand God's purpose in our life. We have to rely on the spiritual blessings as opposed to our carnal needs or our fleshly needs to realize God's purpose in our life. So those are the summary lesson points for Sunday, September the 18th, 2022. Struggling with God from Genesis chapter 32, verses 22 through 26. Struggle with self from Genesis chapter 32, verses 27 through 32. This is Brother Ron with the Sunday School Summary for Sunday, September the 18th, 2022. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed week, and we hope to see you next Sunday for another edition of Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron.